So am I live? I never know. It's always so dumb, Gabs. I think I get used to it. I never do. I think we're live. I'm pretty sure we are. Let me just check. We are live. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Hello, beautiful souls. Hello, beautiful friends, people, tribe. Thank you for joining us this evening with my very special friend and guest, Gabriella Hartigan. She is a psychic counsellor, and she has a lot of wisdom, a lot of experience, and a lot of knowledge, and a great big bundle of love as well to share with us tonight about mental health and psychic health, and are they related? And we're also going to talk about, we were so in the middle of like the conversation, I had to pause the conversation so we could bring it on live for you, because Gabriella is really passionate, as I am, about our children and how to best nurture the psychic development in our children. And I would actually say our inner children as well, wouldn't you, Gabby? Our own inner child.
Absolutely, Tara, 100%. So crucial. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me this evening. I feel very honoured and I feel very peaceful and relaxed this evening with you. So that's wonderful, isn't it? What a great start, Tara.
And we've also got Barney.
Oh.
Show us Barney.
Oh, Barney, yes, of course. This is Barney. He is our wise old owl. And he's my lucky owl, actually.
So yes. We have in common, owls. And by the way, just before we get started, because this is actually a really fascinating, amazing conversation, and I've never had a conversation like this live before, and we've been talking about it recently. Well, we've been talking about it, our whole friendship, probably over the last year or so, haven't we? About mental health and psychic realities, let's say. And so it's going to be super fascinating. And so any of you, by the way, watching, thanks for watching us. Thanks for being here with us. And I'm guessing that you're here because you're interested in the psychic development and the mental health side of things. So if you have questions for myself and Gabby, please put them down so that we can respond to you, because we'd really love to do that. But just before we jump in, so Gabby, you're a psychic counsellor. Do you want to tell everybody exactly what that means, what you do for a living?
Absolutely, because it's a bit like, for example, my son, you know, people say to my son, what does your mum do? And he goes, oh, she's a bit weird. It's like, all right, okay, let's just like rewind.
It's the same.
So basically, join the club, darling.
Yeah.
So basically, you know, psychic has so many different connotations as a word, and everybody has their own perception about that so-called word. But from my perspective, it means that you have the ability and the insight to look deeper into a person's energy or a field on a soul level, on a spiritual level. And it means that you have access to all areas to a certain extent, including the ones ahead of time, which, you know, a lot of us, we get caught into that place of like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Am I making the right decision? So obviously people will often come to somebody like myself, and that could be something to do related to money, health, you know, problems in relationships. It could be your child, for example. So somebody like myself, I'll take you, sit you in a comfortable place, very peaceful, sit back and listen, because listening is so important. And then that's when, on a psychic level, my guides will come in and they will guide me accordingly to get the best information for that person, some insight for that person. But I always say we will never ever tell you what to do, because ultimately it's so important to recognise that we have to make our own choices. So we will kind of give a little bit more extra information and a little peep over the fence, so to speak, but ultimately it is your decision, it's your choice what you decide to do rather, and which way to sort of go with that. So
absolutely, yeah, because people have to feel they have to realise their own responsibility, don't they, and their own empowerment, rather that you're not going to tell something for them, that it is the responsibility of making our own pathway in life, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's a massive responsibility, and I feel that my kind of work here on the earth plane is to awaken people to that responsibility for themselves, so that they can empower themselves by tuning in and, you know, not leaning on somebody else, but you've got all the answers within you, but we just sometimes need to make you consciously aware of that, and then you can, you know, go from that point. And let's face it, these points are ever changing because life is a constant movement, and we are all moving and transitioning each and every moment. And so are the people around us, because we're connected to absolutely everything around us, you know, and we are sensitized and sensitive to that. And then obviously sometimes we can all kind of like forget those things or those elements of ourselves, and then sort of like move into places where we, you know, go through some confusion and we don't quite understand what's happening to us, in whatever that might relate to, basically.
There's so many different tangents I want to take this down just by what you've said. So that sensitivity and how we respond to that, and even how we recognize it, can we come back round to that part? Because first of all, I want to ask you, do you use something to give clairvoyance or psychic, you know, readings for people? What do you use?
Okay, so I mean, I have the gift that I can go straight upstairs, so I don't necessarily need tools, let's put it that way. However, I do use cards as a guide, but also as a visual tool for the person that I'm with as well. Yeah. So that they can kind of like tune into that, because they may read into that something that I may not see into that, because we all look at things from a different perspective. So I'm very sort of open with that as well. So I basically use cards, you know, many different types and sets, but I will kind of tune in as to what is relevant for that particular person when they're sitting in front of me. I just give it all upstairs, so to speak, and let them.
And we've had lots of conversations where you've given me your psychic insight and stuff, and I know as well that you deliver it with so much love. It's like angel, and your name is Gabriella. You are literally this beautiful angelic magic. You know, if you ever meet Gabby in person, she just radiates magic. It's like you're not really human, to be honest. You're just a magical creature that's just
oh darling, keep telling me some more, darling. Oh, flattery.
Actually, I laugh. Gabby was saying she thinks she looks like the crystal ball lady on Harry Potter, the mad frizzy haired crazy woman. So I'm like, the vote is from me that she doesn't, but
I think that's got something to do with the fact that glasses have sort of crept in, you know, to this like, you know, latest chapter of life. Whereas I've
what
never
you
really
what you look like to me is the fairy queen at the end of the what's that movie, the Wizard of Oz, and Dorothy and all the people, the Tin Man, they get to the Emerald City, and the magic queen, and she's got that crown. That's what, and the gold hair. You look like her to me.
Well, I do have a crown, darling, if you want me to pop it on.
I don't know, you may wear your crown. No, but hold seriously. So yeah. Oh my goodness. So first of all, Gabby, how long have you been doing this? Because my understanding, right, when people ask me this question, it's like, well, it's like, when did your emotions develop, or when did you realize certain things? And I don't remember. It was just as I grew, my psychic awareness became more obvious, but it wasn't obvious to begin with. It was just this quirky, weird thing that I would do. And it would weird quite a lot of people out, but I didn't know about it, right? Because you don't see it in yourself when you're a child. And I was very lucky. I think that it's not that I was particularly validated for my psychic abilities, but I grew up in an environment that allowed me to just be me. And it was very free, very open. It was very, you know, early 70s household. My mum and dad were really into meditation and, you know, being vegetarian and, you know, truth and light, and it was amazing. And so I had a very liberal upbringing, which allowed me just to develop, but lots of people don't have that. How did you grow up? How did you recognize your abilities, and like, how did you get validated? Because I think a lot of people want to know, are they, you know, to have their own validation, are they psychic, are they empathic, what are they? And to be able to kind of just get a handle on it so that they can begin to understand it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I hear you clearly, Tara. obviously everybody's got like a different kind of childhood and different like vibrations around it and upbringing. So for example, in my childhood it was very chaotic. I would say to a certain extent we were very much left to our own devices, and equally it's quite a traumatic childhood as well. There was a lot of arguing and all the rest of it, but I seemed to just be in a completely different mode to everybody around me. I just seemed to be in this wonderful bubble where all I felt was just pure love in my heart, and I just felt light, and I always felt very kind of safe in a way within myself and quite protected, and I just had like my own Gabby world going on. So no matter all the chaos going on around me, I was very, very conscious of like my own sort of self and my own sort of self-love. I really threw myself at that point into animals, and I often found that I would forge these most incredible relationships with the animals because they're so innocent and pure and so easy to get on with, better than people at that point.
How old were you then? How old were you then when you
I'm talking about like when I was like 6 and 7. And I always felt like a presence around me, like I wasn't on my own. And I often used to have this experience where literally I felt like somebody was lying on top of me in my bed, and my whole body would just go into like pins and needles. I'd often feel quite like my head would spin, and this is, you know, like your portal at the back here is often where spirit try and get in, and I know we were in very much a haunted house. But to rewind and not diverse, where I first realised there was something different was when I was actually staying at my uncle's house in Jersey, and I actually experienced this whole feeling of like somebody was dead, and I just couldn't understand what dead meant because I didn't know what death was. I hadn't experienced it. But I can remember my grandmother was sleeping in a room, and I kept going in and like sort of pushing her as if to say, you okay, you okay? And she kept like, oh, what's going on, dear? What are you doing? What are you doing? And that particular evening, because I was a bit of a, shall we say, spirited child, they separated me from all the other children, and I had to sleep with my parents in this room on a camp bed. And I can clearly remember having the most amazing experience where I was so peaceful and calm, and I woke up, and there on the windowsill was the most incredible apparition of this woman, and she was so beautiful. So I, you know, physically saw her in the physical dimension, and you know, she was very wispy, and she was looking down at me, and she was talking to me in my mind and saying, oh, you're the naughty one, aren't you? But it was like a recognition of like, I get you, like it's cool to be like that. Now, I never said a word to anybody. I didn't talk about that for years. And then later on, when my father died, and I, you know, went, obviously was at his funeral, and my uncle came to the funeral, I said, excuse me, I've got something to tell you. And I said, I hope you don't think I'm crazy, but I just need to share that with you. And he said to me, I don't think you're crazy at all. I actually know who you saw. And I was like, wow, really? And he said, yeah, that was actually this lady that used to come and stay with us. He said, and when I was building the house, there was parts of it that hadn't been finished. So she was a friend's mother that used to come and stay. This is the island of Jersey, by the way, for those trying to keep up with me. And so basically, this woman, bless her, she'd gone out in the evening, like nighttime, to use the toilet, and she'd gone straight over the top of the stairs because there wasn't a banister there, and she died in the house in a pool of blood. So I obviously felt her energy, and she obviously felt like she wanted to connect with me. So that was like completely validated by somebody who's like very professional and corporate.
When did you get that validation? So how many years later, or how old?
Oh, years and years later did I get that validation. But rewind and all the other experiences, and there are hundreds of them. So I've kind of like accepted my validation 1,000 times over, to be honest with you.
Can I just ask you, did you feel validated before your uncle said that, or had you had loads of these experiences privately and quietly, and then he validated you?
No, I felt validated in that moment, just by myself. Yeah, I didn't need anybody else to tell me. I just knew I had something different about me, and I was quite happy with that. So obviously I've been labelled, many labels have been stuck to me through my life as well. One of them being, you know, like a witch, so to speak. And of course, you know, if I was a so-called witch, I would be a white one, you know, I'd be somebody that was very much in the light, because I've experienced the dark cupboard under the stairs, as I call it, and that's like the darker aspects of life, but I don't really like to go in there. So, for example, if a client is with me and we talk about those things, I can kind of see it, but I keep it to, I would say, to my left-hand side. So it's presented to me, but it stays there, because we don't want to drag up the dirt into the present. We can acknowledge it and then we can move on from it. That's sort of like how I look upon that. Yeah.
So thank you, Gabs. Thank you for sharing that story. And you also mentioned self-love, which of course is wonderful, because you were validating yourself and like approving of yourself, loving yourself. But what I want to, so my understanding is that I know that you and I both felt really different. Like you said, you felt weird, you've been called lots of names, you realized that there was something different about you because you're seeing things that other people aren't seeing. And you had that validation. And I think a lot of children have, if not all children, have some kind of experience that's kind of secret like yours, you know, or unusual, let's say. But I think what usually happens is they don't feel self-validated like you did. And or the opposite can happen, where they can tell somebody and then somebody will shut them down and say no and call them names or give them labels or just cut them off, really.
Yeah.
And I feel like that happens to probably all children. What do you think? Because people always ask me that question, is psychic abilities natural to everyone, or is it something that you get gifted with? What do you think about that?
I think everybody's got that capability, actually. And because, you know, when we're sort of birthed into the world, we know we're very innocent and we're very open, we're very extremely open, so many energies and levels. And our pituitary gland is extremely soft and squidgy. You know, this is like your third eye area. This is like your psychic vision. And I think what happens is you just become more hardened by the kind of so-called paradigms or the rules of society, that it kind of gets bashed out of you along the way. Now, some people manage to go through that and maintain what they have, and most kind of get squashed into a box, or they just completely shut it down themselves because they don't feel that they're supported in that, or they're not recognised by other people in that moment as well. But I would say that very much, I think everybody has that capability, Tara, if they sort of tap and tune into it. I think children are very innocent like that. And I know myself from my own experience that there's been a few people around me who have reported that their child is saying that they can see somebody, or they've got an imaginary playmate, which is a classic common sign when somebody says, oh, I'm playing with so-and-so. And what they're seeing is just the, you know, it's like tracing paper. They're just seeing the other side of, you know, the other room that we kind of move into on the next level. So these children, you know, to me, it's very validated. Like, I will validate that in a child, because I will know that if I meet that child, I can then tap into what they have been seeing, or tap into their experiences without them telling me. So then they think, oh my goodness, yeah, she understands where I'm coming from. Like, I'm not imagining this. And also fear comes into the equation as well, doesn't it? It's that old adage of fear.
It's the cupboard under the stairs, the way that you described it, the darker stuff, the cupboard under the stairs. People don't even want to acknowledge that. They want to keep that cupboard firmly shut and everything else that potentially goes with it, to try and protect their child, probably.
100%, you know, because again, it's just like the judgments, isn't it, of society upon, like, you know, if that got out that the kid was seeing things. And, you know, this has been reported like hundreds of times through millennia, where children are having visions and experiences. You know, there are famous cases, there are not such famous cases.
I mean, it must happen so much, and it doesn't get reported or talked about ever.
Exactly.
Because, like, maybe the devil has possessed the child, you know, that would have been an old, you know, a way that would have been communicated, and it isn't actually that long ago, and there are cultures that probably still use that language, you know, or that, you know, you're possessed by the devil, don't talk about that, or you're mad, you're crazy, you're mad, you're seeing things, you know, it's not real, you're seeing something that isn't real. Now can we just think about that for a moment? What does
I'm doing it right now.
What does that do to a little child whose psyche is developing? Their awareness, their self identity is still developing. Their sense of the world, their sense of what's safe and what's real and what's right is still developing. Their whole perception, their emotional body, their mental body, everything, their brain is still developing. What does it do to a child to be told that's bad, that's wrong, or that's evil, or that's dark, or you shouldn't do that, or that's not real, or well, you're seeing things? What does that do to us?
What it does is it just, like, I'm reading into that now, and to me it just causes a lot of depression within a child. You know, it causes a lot of suppression, and depression is depressing, it's suppressing what needs to be expressed and what needs to come out. And so therefore those wonderful kind of pathways, the doors get shut, and all of that energy kind of gets pushed and squashed and crushed down into that soul. So it's like, you know, you're put into a cage in my head. Like, I just feel like you're stuck in a cage and you're screaming to get out, but you're not allowed out. You have to stay where you are. And it's very like being, you know, like shackled. It's very much being tied up and tied down. And I think that that's, you know, a lot of depression is, you know, depression is just like, you know, sort of being cut off from your expression, from what you're actually feeling. So in that moment, to me, in my mind, you're being kind of deprived in a way, your own emotions and your own feelings. You're you know, that makes you feel sad, Tara. I can just tell by looking in your eyes that crucifies you.
Well, I'm also my brain is going down several different routes at once, but one of them is that, and isn't it ironic that that's what happens to that part of your mind, your psyche, your identity, your soul gets put in that cage, the door is shut, you know, ka-chang. And then actually, as you grow up and that part of you isn't let out, guess what happens? Very often these people can end up actually in an institution where they are literally either behind physical bars because their behavior is like, that's not okay to leave a part of ourselves shut up and closed down and told that we're wrong or we're delusional. That is going to cause some kind of an effect. So either they're getting shut behind bars, or I was remembering this hospital I did a summer's work in when I was about 19. I was on summer holiday from university, and I come back to mid Wales where my parents were living at the time and I'd been growing up. And I got a job in this hospital that was like a big, massive old country house in the middle of nowhere, where all of these adult patients from 40 years onwards and, you know, and upwards, who were all had severe mental health learning difficulties, severe, like most of them couldn't talk and couldn't feed themselves. And I was a nurse looking after them. And the guy that ran the place, he took me up to the attic, because this was an old institution, and that he showed me where there was still torturous devices up in this massive, dirty, dusty attic, and the padded cell. He showed me the padded cell, those old-fashioned padded, I mean, then maybe they're still used, but those white jackets,
straight jackets,
and those contraptions that were up there that the patients used to have things done to them. And we've all seen movies, you know, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, flipping heck, does that happen to people? And that's extreme, okay, but there are still many mental health institutions where people are maybe not locked up behind bars, but they're in a closed ward, a locked ward, where they are not allowed out, and they are fed certain things, and, you know, mentally and, you know, physical food. And there's a lot of people like that. And then there's lots of kind of in between places where there's, you know, those, I don't know what they call, but they're kind of maintained homes. And then of course there's a lot of people just on the streets and massively undiagnosed, who are walking around with parts of themselves locked up in cages. And it just seems quite a horrific state of humanity to me. And I'm just like, is that because what happens on the inside ends up happening on the outside? Is that because if we're not allowed to develop psychically, we actually do go crazy, we do go mad, we do start inventing things or seeing things that, how do we know that they're not there? If we can't see them, it doesn't mean they're not there, right? Well, I mean, that isn't that.
Absolutely. And I think that, mental health and spirituality, when I first touched upon mental health myself with this family member, it was very much like a fine line. And the first thing that came to me was, oh my God, it was like that reality wake-up call of like, people that are actually hearing things and people that are not hearing things but say they are hearing things. It's such a fine line. And it's all about vibrations, as you know, isn't it? It's all about resonance and vibrations. And I think the sad fact of what we're talking about here is, to me, the suppression also comes where drugs are administered. Like, how the hell do you escape from that? And a lot of people sort of turn to taking antidepressants, for example. And I feel very, very strongly that I'm a real sort of advocate for talking therapy. And I'm a real advocate for people being given the opportunity that if they do become unwell, for example, mentally, whether that's through their own kind of psychic inquiry or whether it's a genuine medical condition, because that's the fine line. That's the difficulty is on what side, is it schizophrenia, or is it like, I mean, now I'm going to go a bit extreme. Some people won't like this, but is it like some form of a possession? Because I've also seen people that have been absolutely fine, and then it's almost like their bodies are like sort of, we're talking about something else here, obviously, but their bodies are kind of like possessed by another energy or entity, and they have a complete like personality transition and change. So they could be actually changing their complete appearance or their clothes. I mean, again, there's been so many things documented through time.
But do you think people get like that? Sorry, Gabs. Do you think people get like that, into that state, because they weren't psychically validated as a child? Do you think that that's linked?
I feel there is a massive link. Yes, I do. I feel there's a massive link where a child, for whatever reasons, hasn't had the platform of self-discovery and expression, and they have been shut down in that moment. And that energy that can't be expressed is locked down, and it just accumulates more kind of frustration, like a stickle brick. It just brings in more frustration and more negative energy towards it.
It's got to go somewhere, hasn't it?
Everything is energy, as you know. We're all energy, and energy is like a complete movement, continuous movement. And of course, if energy is trapped, like for example, you would say, oh, feng shui, for example, you'd move that piece of furniture around, not to trap that energy in that corner, because energy gets trapped, like souls get trapped, like children get trapped and labelled.
Absolutely.
And it's the same kind of principle. I know it's awful, isn't it, to talk about, but it's the reality. And I would say to anybody out there who's got an exceptionally sensitive child, I think the most important thing is to just take a breath, stop and listen. And, just listen, because we're surrounded by so much noise, and, we're all in that survival mode to a certain extent. We've all got to earn money, blah, blah, blah. So it's all like that time frame thing. And of course, it becomes so technical now as well. But I think it's so important.
Like on their devices all the time. Like, just, whatever, go over there.
They're not in the present moment. They're not actually in alignment. They're completely out of it. And, everybody's racing around like mad March hares, and nobody's actually taking time just to stop and listen and breathe and just spend some quality time. These aren't accusations, by the way, but it's so important, isn't it, to spend some quality time with your children as well, and to recognise that if there is anything going on with them, you know, to kind of address that as best you can and not panic, because equally children are constantly upgrading and learning, and children do go through like mad phases and crazy phases, don't they? You know, they go through quiet phases where they're a bit more subdued, and people will say to me, my child hasn't come out of its room for so long. I'm like, that's normal, you know, that's a teenage phase.
But also just don't ignore them. Like, don't worry about it. Because I just had that vision then of a child being a gift. When you're a parent and you get a child, that child is such a precious gift. And like everything, you don't just get the gift at the box gift, you know, the box around the gift and just enjoy the box. You have to take the lid off. You have to open up inside and discover the gift, like really receive the gift that somebody's given you. So if your child is a gift and they're not allowed to have their lid taken off, and they're not allowed to just come out and have their gifts grow, or maybe like a little acorn, you know, when you plant the acorn and inside the acorn is an oak tree, and you can't look at an acorn and go, well, that's rubbish, there's no oak tree, you can't tell me that's an oak tree. But you plant it, you nurture it, you let it grow in its own way and encourage that growth, and you'll get a magnificent, beautiful, huge, strong oak tree. I think children are pretty much the same, because that's nature.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we have to kind of take responsibility for and bear in mind is what your child is eating. What are you feeding your child? You know, because you have those different elements of nutrients within food. And, you know, the children today, there's so much access to food 24/7, but obviously junk food. And that is like the absolute bottom end of the tank, isn't it? Yeah, we all get a little bit of a taste sometimes for things that aren't so good for us. But I think you really need to look at children and what they're eating. You know, if you're going to give a child lots of sugar, that's not going to do that child many favours, you know, with its developmental growing up.
And all the fake sugars as well, or the fake sweeteners, the aspartame, sorbitol, the dextrose, all the crappy.
Yeah.
It's not even real sugar anymore. Like, sugar's one thing, and then there's white processed sugar, and then there's the stuff that's not even sugar anymore. It's like, what is that made in a lab?
It's just chemicals. It's just chemicals. So if you've got a sensitive child, for example, and that child is just, you know, sort of like binging out on chemicals, you know, that's going to have an effect on their mental health. So it's so important that you kind of, although it can be difficult in a modern world and modern society, is just to step back again and take a little look about what has my child been eating recently? You know, what are we feeding our children? Because that's so important that they get all the nutrients that they need for their growth, their mental well-being, their spiritual well-being, you know, and their physical, obviously their physical well-being, but all go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, by the way. I really appreciate you saying that massively.
Yeah, it's very true.
And the water they're drinking, because it's like, it's true. If you were trying to grow a tree and you were putting poison on it, but essentially chemical poison and contaminated water, that tree wouldn't grow very healthy, and you certainly wouldn't want to eat any fruits off that tree. Absolutely. And yet that's what we feed our children, and we wonder why they're having problems and issues. I think that's a really, really, really important point.
It's a very valid point, because obviously a lot of the children that are landing on this planet, which is evolving, as we know, we're all going through these massive shifts and upgrades. All of us are going through it. So the children that are arriving on the planet, they're extra sensitive as well. So they're going to be double bubble to anything that is fed to them. Like, they're going to be totally like, oh, you know, they're going to react to things. And I think you're seeing that more and more now with like autism and Asperger's and all these different, you know,
normal now, isn't it? Like, how many people have this diagnosis now? It's nuts.
But that's just another perception, isn't it? That's just another way of how they view the world. So all these sensitive children coming in, like, you know, the crystal children, rather, the indigo children, they're all extremely sensitive children. It's sensitive souls landing on the planet. Absolutely. And so we have to be sort of a little bit nurturing and conscious about that as well. And you know, you're going to get different segments of society. You know, some people are more tuned in with that than others, and some people haven't touched upon that because their environment hasn't given them the opportunity to make that inquiry. So just us having this conversation now, you know, there could be somebody there right now listening to you and I, where this might be really enlightening for them, or they might understand all of this and much more and tell you and I a thing or two. But I think it's always about education and just talking and listening, you know, talking and listening as much as possible, and being more consciously aware of our precious children. And, you know, I mean, we all come in with lessons that we have to learn regardless. We know that. But at the end of the day, it's life, isn't it? But we have to take the responsibility, like you suggest, like if you had a beautiful tree, and nurture that soul. We're nurturing souls, and they are a gift, a true gift to us.
It's true. And I do think that how we were nurtured and then how we choose to nurture ourselves as a response to that very much dictates how we then nurture another. And we might think we're doing a fairly good job, but if we haven't, you know, nurtured ourselves, we don't actually know what good nurturing is. So it does come back to that. I want to just bring it in because in my mind, if we think about levels, right, we talk about physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, or psychic, right? Like there's a density. They start with the most heavy, the physical, and then the watery, the emotional body, the subconscious, then the, you know, the mental, the thought, vibration, because it gets higher in vibration, right? And then the spirit. So our mental level, people are starting to really realize now how what we think affects our emotions. And it took humanity a really long time to figure that one out, right? And because you can actually trace it, you can actually watch. I mean, I do this with my eyes, but you can actually measure how the thought vibrations and the signal, the energy of the thought, positive, negative, harmful, non-harmful, whatever, it's like putting a live wire into a bucket of water, right? Or the wire into the water and put electricity through it. The electricity will go into the water and charge the water. So if you have really charged thoughts, really heavy thoughts, that's going into your, well, first of all, we are water, right? Mostly water, 70% water, whatever.
Yeah.
Varying, you know, on how old we are, because children have more water in their bodies than us dry old prune adults.
Look, darling, count me out.
I feel nice and plump at the moment, no, with my water balance. But no, what I mean is, it's like, so that's our emotional body as well. It's not just the water in our body. That actually goes into our cells. That water makes our cells. That water informs, you know, it's our emotional body as well. So how we are spoken to, how we are related to, about how we perceive is basically where I'm going with this. So if we're a little kid or an adult, and we're perceiving something through our sensory ranges, our normal, you know, we can see things with our eyes, like you saw that woman, or we can hear things with our ears and we're like, where is that coming from? Or we can feel empathically other people's emotions, but we don't understand we're doing it, right? And somebody tells us we're mad, we're crazy, live in the real world, you're not living in reality, whatever, and they shut that down. What that does to us in our mind on a psychological level basically says, I'm not okay to be me, I'm faulty, I'm wrong. And then what that does into the emotional body, what that does to the water. And I think people have started generally to kind of start understanding this a bit more. But what I don't think has really been talked on very much at all. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you, Gabby, is the next level up. It's like we can think, okay, how do my thoughts affect my body? Affect my emotions and therefore my physical body? But did we think, how do my thoughts affect my psychic ability, and therefore, and also my psychic ability or higher awareness, let's say, affect my day-to-day thinking? I haven't heard a conversation like this ever before until you and I started talking about it.
That's a big deal. That's like massive, because, you know, you know, you are what you think and feel, aren't you? So it's so important to consciously, we're going somewhere with this, to consciously heighten ourselves and become more conscious of what we're thinking and more conscious about where that's coming from. Because when you're talking about psychic experiences, it is like a hotline, a conduit, piece of wiring from a much higher source, and that's what you call intuition. And intuition is connected with creativity and all sorts. Children are very creative generally, aren't they, as well, when you think about that? And it's just being conscious of that, because the thing with what you're talking about, it's a bit like electricity, as you suggested earlier on, because you can't necessarily see it, touch it or smell it, but it's there. Absolutely. So these energies and these ethereal realms and these higher realms certainly exist, and they go to such great depths. So yes, I think I'm trying to get to the point here that you have to be consciously aware of what you are actually thinking or feeling or tapping into, and how impacting that is on your mood, because often it's the mood that will be the how do we say, it's the mood that would be the cursor or the precursor to how your day is going to go. Because you could get out of bed and be springy and spring everywhere, and then someone could say something negative to you, it gets into your psyche, you start going up higher and you start to attract in negative energy. You know, this, you're talking about manifestation, Tara.
I hear what you're saying there. No, I hear what you're saying. So if you're starting to develop a negative persona or self-identity because people have said bad things to you and you've believed it, because we're innocent. We're pretty innocent as human beings. We like to think we're big and tough, but we're not. We're like sponges. People say a bad thing, we'll carry it for years. Even big, burly, strong, grown up, tough people. Someone said something to them 20 years ago and they'll still carry it, because we're so permeable. We are so sensitive. Everybody is. And it's true. So if you've had enough people say bad things to you because they were feeling shit and they've put it onto you, you start to believe that becomes your own self-perception. You're right. You start to go up higher. If you don't get sunk down and depressed, you go the other way. You start to go up higher. Well, I'm better than you, or I'm going to escape this by climbing up onto the roof, or then I'm going to go up a little bit higher if people start to attack me there. And you're totally right. This is like how we become open to psychic attack. We bring the negativity upstairs, right?
Absolutely.
And I think and then we're looking for the love. I think ultimately we're looking for somewhere in a level of existence where we feel important, that we matter, that we're not a piece of shit, that we're not some crappy, what people have told us. We're looking for that validation that I'm better than what these people have told me. And I think that's where people can really, with the trauma, start going into places of like that superiority, detrimental side of psychic awareness or being tapped in, where I think it's like things start to get invented, or it's real for that person, but because they're looking to be validated is more important than they actually feel in their human body. Do you know what I mean? And then they start to believe maybe that they're Merlin reincarnated, or that they're Jesus Christ reincarnated, or that they're super magic and they can fight dragons and whatever it is, because they need to feel more important than they've actually been told that they are on a very identity.
Absolutely. And of course, as we know, like human beings are incredibly emotionally complex. We are so complex, and we do have this arrogance about us that we assume there's an answer for everything, and there isn't. It's just self-inquiry constantly. You create your own reality and dimension in your world. And we're not meant to know the whole picture, because if we did, we'd probably implode, because we'd be so overwhelmed with it, we wouldn't know how to handle that.
I have actually felt like that, and that's why I've actually stopped. I've had big gaps where I don't use my psychic abilities, because the more I open to it, the bigger it gets, and the more I don't know, and the more things I can see. And then I just really, and also because there's nobody to validate it, it's like if you go up, 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 and you start seeing a whole range of things, and it's like, who can I talk to about this? and I can check in and go, did that happen for you? Is that real? And then I can start to go, okay, well, I could trust that too. Do you know what I mean? And
I do, 100%.
I think largely I do trust myself, but also there's that, well, it feels safer to come down a little bit, you know. And I think I also feel like that happens for a lot of people too, because it's so, it's I mean, there are people that chart this stuff. There are schools, there are mystery schools, there are people on the planet that are unbelievably tuned in, you know, they can travel dimensions, they are psychic as anything. But there's a small handful of those people, but generally speaking, I think it's largely unknown, you know, like out of space.
Yes, it's uncharted waters. It's uncharted energies that are kind of like really up and out there and, you know, off the scale. And of course, each and every one of us, we're all on like a different level, and we've all got that ability, but we're all like on a different level. And there's so many levels. It's like binary code. It's just so many different levels. It's just, but it would blow your mind. Sorry.
How do we know it's real? No, I interrupted you. I'm sorry, it's my bad. I've just got loads of questions. I'm like, but how do we know it's real?
Because I would say, how do we know things are real is because we have to have trust. Like, I couldn't do my work unless I trusted in what was happening and what I believe in. Like, if I didn't trust myself, I certainly wouldn't be trusting anything that I said or anything that I did. So it's, you know, and trust is like going back to your self-love, isn't it? Really, it's all about self-love, self-care, self-development, and just trusting in your heart energy, because everything goes back to that, doesn't it? It goes back to that heart energy.
Yeah, where you can feel something is true or not true.
Exactly. And your heart will always tell you. Like, we all have that intuition where we get like a hunch feeling like, I don't think I'm really going to get on with that person, or I feel like there's something not quite right, you know. And that's where your intuition is, like, from a creative perspective, it's coming from that heart energy. And they've proved, haven't they, that the heart is like the second brain. Like, you know, what I love about this world we're in right now is that science is proving the psychic, you know, science is making validations now. You know, it is recording these things and it is capturing these images, for example.
Yeah, so we can see it, and it's not the invisible electricity anymore. It's becoming more visible to everybody.
Absolutely.
No, it's totally true. I think trusting yourself, because if you take baby steps, like you trusted that first apparition of the lady, it was real, you validated it. That's a trust. That's a trust bond you've made with yourself. Then when something else happens, you can check in with it. Is that real? Does it feel in my heart? Yeah, that's real. A trust bond is made, and then we can start to grow trust with like little bite-sized chunks.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really helpful for people who maybe, you know, almost want to do the big trust and the big stuff first. And I think your story really is important to remember. Like, if we didn't have the trust for ourselves when we were little, and you start trying to do it as a grown-up, there's a big gap where there was no trust, and you can't kind of leap that gap. You have to go back and do the little baby steps.
Exactly, because it's like anything in life, you know, you have to have your foundation and build upon that. So if there are any bricks missing out of the wall, so to speak, you're going to be short of information or connection. So yeah, it's just like a process. And I wanted to ask you, Tara, if you've ever had what I call them flatliners, where you have a complete out of body experience. You could be literally anywhere. I'll give you an example. I was walking my dog one day, bless him, Badger, he's not with us anymore. But I had quite a lot on my mind. I thought I'd just do a quick detour down the canal. And then the next minute, it was like, oh my God, I looked like I was having an orgasm. I'm standing there in the middle of this like canal filled with the dog going, oh, like it was incredible. But my whole body just kind of expanded outward, and I was connected to absolutely every single thing around me. And this voice in my head was going, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. And I just felt the most incredible love. Like, the love was just, it transcended me. Like, I was like, wow. Like, the love was incredible that I felt. It was just like falling onto a pink fluffy cloud of complete pure oh, like being in heaven. It was like landing in heaven, but being on earth, but being, and the next minute this woman said, Gabby, are you okay? And it was such a shame, because she then brought me straight back down to earth, and I wasn't impressed. But it was like an amazing experience, and I'm sure some of the people that are listening to you and I this evening have had similar stories. And I think, wouldn't it be lovely if we could all collaborate and share our wonderful stories?
Gosh, yeah.
Stuff, you know.
And also, how do we tap into that more often, like that love energy? Because that's what I feel. I'm like psychic schmykic, you know, it's, you can have all these abilities. Oh, am I frozen or are you frozen? Something's just stopped. Oh no, you're there. You know, you can have all these abilities and see things and hear things and feel things. And I do think it's hugely important to have that validated, just like, are my eyes working? Yes, your eyes are working. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. You know, we need that validation. We check in with a child's senses when they're small to see if they can see and hear and feel and everything. But also, if we did that with their psychic abilities and just checked in with that development, I think it would be really, really important. But more important than that, I think, well, like you said, the foundation that it comes back to is that love. Because ultimately, when we're seen for who we are, then we feel loved. All right, or just loved for whatever we're seeing, whatever we're picking up on. And that actually, that our hearts can be the measure as well of what's really real and what's maybe just an illusion. Maybe it's something that we're not, you know, because people always ask the difference, don't they? What's real psychic stuff and what's imagination? And imagination is fantastic, so don't stop that. But it's like, I think it's our heart that really lets us know.
Absolutely, 100%.
I love that you brought that in.
That's your tuning fork.
It is.
It is 100%, you know, because you can't do psychic work unless you trust what you're saying, unless you fall into your heart and trust what you're saying. Because if you don't trust, it's not happening. And then it's kind of like forced, and then like it gets caught up in the headspace, which is not where it comes from. It comes from another realm, like spirit, you know, from spirit, through spirit, to spirit.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And if there's no love involved, then why would you even care? Like, that's
exactly.
Like, people about being psychic when actually it's just psychic without love is just, what is it? I think it's dysfunctional. It's not real. That to me is like, why would you want
hollow? It's a bit hollow, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, and I just feel like it's so important to also to understand, for example, when I'm working, like when I meet somebody, I tune in with the vibration of their voice, because their vibration is unique to them. Their voice is unique to them. So people say, well, how the hell can you do a reading on telephone call? Well, to me, it's magic, because I don't need to see you, because all the information is right there in your vortex, in your energy center, in your voice box. So that gives me access to all areas of your life, and sneakily over the fence to people around you equally.
I do that too, right? You can
because we're all connected. We're all all the people that we meet in our lives, our souls are all connected. We're all here for a purpose together. We're all learning from each other. We all kind of came here in a kind of soul group energy. Like, we all have something to give to each other, and that doesn't stop or break away. So, for example, when somebody passes away, sometimes, to be honest with you, I have found that family members are more helpful when they're on the other side than when they're here on the earth. Get that one, Tara.
I believe you.
I find that quite fascinating. Because what I do as well is with my work, I'm also doing diagnostics as well, because I'm actually a trained reflexologist as well. So I've got like my physiology, anatomy, and I trained like top course in the country, and that was over a year. I could tell you so many stories, but we don't have time. But so it's very diagnostic, my work as well, because one of my guides, he's actually my nephew, he's a little boy. He's who I call my scanner, and he will often scan people as we are having our one-to-one in our conversation, and he will often let me know if there's something going on that they might not be consciously aware of. And then I'll check in with him and he'll tell me if I can present that to that person or if I need to hold back on that. So you've got to have
you mean him in spirit or him in real life body?
Oh, I beg your pardon. I mean my gorgeous Frederick in spirit. He's my nephew in spirit, and he's 9 years old, but he's here now with me and he's laughing. So I'm a bit older than that now, Auntie G. Because they kind of develop on the other side as well. They don't just stop there. They keep moving, they keep developing. But he's like my scanner, and he often checks in and tells me if there is an issue with somebody. So he's wonderful, because with him being with me, we work very well with children as well. We want to bring this back to what we're trying to explain this evening as well, about children and psychic abilities. And he often is very guiding and helps me with children, because children will open up and talk to me, whereas they might not be able to do that with their parents, because I'm like a big kid anyway, as you know. So I just kind of tune in with kids and just make them feel loved and safe, for God's sake. A lot of it is just like, oh, she gets me, like I can be myself, and this is like really nice, because I just go, you're a big kid as well, Tara, come on. You just go down on their level every time.
But that's all we all really want, isn't it? Whether we're little kids or big kids, or we have little inner kids. We all just want to be like someone to get on our level, to see us for who we are, and to be ourselves and love us. Like everybody wants that.
Absolutely. But I'm really feeling this sense of psychic inquiry with people that are tuning in right now. I don't know who's here with us, but I'm really getting a sense of that. And I wanted to kind of talk as well with you, if you don't mind, about premonitions. Do you know the difference between a dream and a premonition, for example?
No, you tell us.
Well, for me, the way that a premonition works, it's like my premonitions are like when I'm in sleep mode, okay? So I know it's a premonition because the two factors in play are, it's like looking at the whole event roll out, but through like a piece of hourglass. Like it's like looking through a piece of slightly distorted glass, okay? And you see events play out. And then in the morning, you have no memory whatsoever. There is nothing that you remember about anything that you witnessed in that moment until the event unfolds and it's in front of you. You suddenly get the aha moment of, oh my God.
Well, like a deja vu, you mean? Like when you've pre-seen something, already seen it?
Yeah, I mean, I had, I think one of my weirdest, I've had so many, but my weirdest premonition was, and it wasn't very nice, to be honest with you, but it was Grenfell Tower. I actually had a premonition of that whole situation, and in the actual premonition, all these fire engines were coming out from all over London, which is what happened. There was many fire engines sent, and the ladders were going up and down, and they had problems with the ladders, getting the ladders up there, and they didn't, there was issues, massive issues around it. And like this big fireman's like hat and helmet, and it's like I was the fireman, and the next minute they just put these binoculars on me and just pulled me back, and I'm seeing this whole inferno, like, and then this huge fire engine just went, and that was it. I was gone. But I witnessed all these events, and of course in the morning when I woke up, I had no memory of it whatsoever. And then obviously the news goes on occasionally, doesn't it? And the next minute everything was in front of me, and it just was like, oh my God. Because I think I do a lot of work at night time. I don't know if you have a sense of that, where you can do a lot of work at night time.
Like all the time. People are always telling me that they see me coming and telling them things in their sleep as well. Like I visit people, and I get that all the time. But so when you saw this premonition, did you only realize that you'd seen it before once Grenfell Tower had actually happened, and you're like, oh my goodness, and it came back to you? Or did you see it and then go, oh my goodness, this is going to happen?
I saw it and then it happened, and that's the connection. And some of it some of the ones that I've had I've remembered them, they've come back to me, and then they've happened, and then it's been like, wow, I've had so many.
How do you feel like, because you'd want to, I imagine you'd want to pre-warn people when you see something like that. So what do you do when you have a premonition?
I'm still trying to make that inquiry myself. Like, what the hell do you do when you see something before events unfold? What is the purpose of that? Because, come on, let's be honest, a lot of it is out of your control. There's nothing you can do. And I wonder what that's all about, you know, sort of blooming into pockets of time ahead before they've happened. That I find really bizarre, actually. I find them quite fascinating, premonitions.
That's a whole another landscape.
It's a whole nother level, that one.
The one thing I just did want to ask you, because I'm not sure, I think my internet went out a bit funny there, but one thing I do want to, two things I want to ask you before we wrap up, is about, you were talking about the earth changing and kids being born with, you know, being more psychic, and I want to ask you where you think we're going as a planet in a minute. But I also wanted to, and I've just forgotten the other thing I wanted to ask you. It was about, oh no, you know when you've just been trying to hold something in your brain and then it's gone. Wanted to ask you about, I think something to do with channeling, and do you know what, I can't remember, but you channel things as well, don't you? And I want to just check in because we've had loads of people putting some comments up here.
Oh, how lovely.
I know. And one lady, Melissa Sue, she says her son still does that, so I'm not quite sure what that was, but he talks about his past mum and friends. And Sonia Beverly Hilton says, I always felt different, but never had the self-validation from being in and out of care. So I was always shunned from pillar to post. And now in my 40s, I'm opening up to my psychic abilities after being on a 12-year healing path.
Wow, that's incredible.
I know. Seth Leith Pruzansky says the leaders of a brighter world. I reckon he was talking about the kids. I agree with you. Donna Bailey is saying, hold on, I've got the faces in the way. Natural as a child in my personal experience anyhow. Yeah. And Candice is saying, hi. I bet you were psychic as a kid as well, Candice. And Donna's saying, I believe my childhood or imaginary friends were my spirit guides. What's your thought, ladies? That's what I was going to ask you about the channeling. I'm glad I read that. I was going to ask you about spirit guides, because a lot of people, I think, want to know how to access their spirit guides, Gabs, and if their spirit guides are real. So what would you, have you got anything that you can share with people about?
Yeah, sure. I would say again, it's about, you know, your spirit guides can be people that you knew in a past life. Your spirit guide could be yourself from a past life. Your spirit guide is a hunch and a feeling, you just know, and you'll see, if you pay attention, you will find your guide. If you ask for your guide, you'll find your guide. Your guide will come to you at some point, but you have to find that quiet place and space, a sanctuary for yourself. And you'll just know. And and I get it, because it's really difficult to trust in that. Like, is that my guide or isn't it? You know, and I get that. And I think it's just giving yourself the time to make that inquiry of investigation and trusting into it. You've got to fall into your heart energy and not think. That's the point. Don't think at all, because you'll feel it. You'll feel an energy around you. You'll feel presence around you. You may feel somebody standing behind you. You know, you may feel somebody standing to the right or to the left of you, but you will feel a presence around you. And if you sit quiet, this is a good tip actually, if you sit quietly and you just like take some breaths and you ask your guide to come in, they will come in, and you will feel the physical as well, because they will often put their hands on you for validation. So you may feel something in your hair, like a light prickling sensation or something in your hair, or you may feel like a warmth come over you, like on the side of you, or literally feel hands going upon your own hands or your legs or around your ankles, because they've all got a different way of making their own connection.
I love that you said that, and it's totally true, because in my opinion, this is how it works for me. It's like all of my senses are completely linked into my pineal gland in the middle. So I can see, hear, taste, touch, sense, smell, empathize, all kind of, all the things, but they all join up to the middle. It all kind of becomes one sense. So even if I'm hearing something, I might get the taste of it, and I'll get a visual, and I'll feel the empathy with it, and you get a sense. Do you know what I mean? It's like you get
Absolutely.
all of the senses, so they're not actually separated out, like you only have vision or you only have audio. They all go back, all roots go back to the same point in the mind, where you have that. Even if it's just a knowing, it still has to register up here. I've got a sensation of just absolutely knowing, and it is all of those. Well, it is all of those things. It's not just.
Sorry, I mean, I have, people might think I'm nuts, but often, like my African man, he will come through, and he will, if he needs to get a message across, he will go into Afrikaner. And that person will think, what the hell? But it's like he's got to get his message across to that person, and I've got like quite a few individual characters. They're quite interesting actually, but they will come in when the time's right, and they will stamp their message, like they need to be heard because you need to hear it for whatever reasons, so I get very enthusiastic about all of it.
I think they come through to you. I think they come through to you, Gabby, because you're so open and so loving. Like, you're a very welcoming person. You're not standoffish. You're not closed. You're just very like, yes, come in and have a cup of tea. You make it. You're very, very open and loving. And so perhaps that's why your gifts are so tuned in, because you're so accepting, just naturally open and loving and accepting. And I think that's kind of a prerequisite, isn't it? It's like, if you've got the door closed, you're not going to see anybody on the other side. You open the door, you'll be like, oh, then you can see them. It can just be that simple, just being open. And people say, oh, I'll believe it when I see it. But if you've got your eyes closed, you're not going to see anything.
No, but I love it when we can prove people wrong.
Do you?
That's the best bit. I like a bit of a challenge.
Do you?
I do.
Let me flex my side muscles.
It's wonderful to see somebody go, oh my God, you told me that. And actually, and they're like, where does that come from? And I said, well, it's not from me. I'm just a messenger. So that's what I love. I love people when they come back and go, oh, Gabby, do you remember what you said to me? I go, no, not really, because it goes in one ear and straight out of the other, because everybody's lives are private. We've all got our Pandora box, for God's sake, and I'm certainly not letting anyone out of that box. It's like everything that goes in there stays in there. If you want to bring it up to me, that's fine, but it will just go straight back in there again,
Absolutely. You can't carry it all around, can you? It's too much.
Oh God, no, definitely not.
So one last question, okay, before we talk, I've got another question now. When people say, oh, my higher self told me this, and I've had people come to me whose higher selves have told them some very, I would say, perhaps not so healthy things. How do you know? I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. I don't know. No,
it's fine. Carry on.
How do you know if it's like, what is our higher self, and when is that real and when is that not real? Because I think that gets very, especially for people who have had a lot of, like we said, psychological trauma, and they're going into their higher selves that's more wise and more knowledgeable than their persona has been made out to be. Like, their persona, their identity is shit, they know nothing, they're stupid. That's how they've grown up to perceive themselves. And so they've got this higher self that's more knowing and wise and can tell them some. The higher self isn't always wise. You have to be careful of the higher self too, because I believe that you have like exit points in life as well, where you can choose and elect to leave the planet if you want to. So you have to be careful with your higher self. You have to respect it as well. Like, for example, I can remember my higher self looking at my child in the cot going,
oh, you're so beautiful. And he lit up like gold light. And my higher self said, you did what you were meant to do on this planet. You can go home now. And I went, I know, I'm tired. I want to go home now. And then not long after that, I had an ectopic pregnancy and nearly elected to go back home. And do you understand what I mean? So you have to be so careful about your higher self. Like, you have to respect it. You have to give it the attention it deserves. And tuning in with it is just like, you know, like breathing and having a conversation. And again, you'll get a sense, you'll feel it, and it does feel a bit etheric. It's like something spinning around up here that may not make complete sense down here on the earth plane, but it's like information that comes in. It's a bit of a weird one, the higher self, because I always say the higher self generally can do a much better job than we can when we get caught up in our heads.
But I suppose, like, is it a real higher self, or is it actually just trauma, like a superior version of yourself who's in trauma, talking to yourself? And that's where I think, again, coming back to trust, checking in with your heart, and is it loving? Like, even if you're getting messages from what feels like your higher self and you've got that good relationship, because you could have some great things, but checking in and saying, but is this really loving? Is this a loving thing that I should do for myself?
I love the fact that you're so grounded. You know,
I have to be.
So
I didn't
important.
used to be.
So
Gab,
important.
I was up there,
I can
and
imagine.
I could feel so much, too much, and my body was very sick because my spirit was out of my body. And so I've worked really hard to get my spirit very grounded into my body, and that was self-love that bridged that gap for me, because I didn't want to be on this planet. I would have let myself go not a million, but many times over.
I get that.
And a lot of people are, you know, that's massive. A lot of people, and this ties us up to where, you know, how I wanted to wrap this up. A lot of people have really struggled. I even had a meme that got to me yesterday that was like, you know, didn't want to be here. I knew it was going to be hard work before I got here, you know, and that we are here in a body. We are a spirit in a body. We do have to navigate emotions and thoughts and mental and other people and their thoughts and their mental abilities and their psychic abilities and their emotions and the physical and the whole thing. It's the whole shebang.
Well, it's all become so extremely transparent, hasn't it? It's going on so many levels. It's like an onion. It's just like it's like a big onion, but it's just endless levels of inquiry, and you know, and it's so fragile and delicate. Tara,
I love that. I think people understand the onion because they talk about peeling the layers of the onion, you know, talking about healing. But actually, if you can see all of the layers of the onion because it's transparent, that's how different realities, right? That's how different.
Yes, and they are endless. They're limitless.
More transparent than ever lately.
My gosh, no wonder everyone's going nuts, Tara.
No wonder everyone's crying. Onions everywhere.
My suggestion this evening to everybody out there as well is it's really important that you find a bit of fun time and have a good laugh and stay away from anything negative and just invite like positivity into your life, like watching a comedy or something and being kinder to yourself. Like, Tara, come on, you and your self-love. I love you, me. We need to do more of that, don't we? We need to really engage in that because that is the key. The key is, you know, we can all take ourselves way too seriously and take life too seriously, and we need to lighten up, you know.
We do. And even if nobody else is validating us, you check in with your heart, and if it feels real and if it feels right to you, then you validate you. Because I've seen a whole bunch of stuff that a load of people would think I was completely crackers. Apart from you, Gabs, you believe me when I say I've seen unicorns and things, like real ones.
Absolutely.
Not everybody would, and I don't talk about it too much because it is more important to be in your heart, and it is that foundation has to be established first. Health in the body, health in the emotions, health in the mind, and health in your psychic awareness. Because if you haven't got health in your body and in your emotions and then in your mind, you're not going to be healthy psychically. It stands to reason. You can't just choose one level to live in. We have to live in all of the levels. We have to be the whole onion.
Yeah, baby, we got to be the whole onion.
That's going to be a meme. So Gabs, just to wrap up, because we've been talking for an hour and a quarter, but it's been brilliant.
Really, I think everyone's been enjoying themselves, though. It's rather nice, isn't it? All gathered together.
I want to read more comments in a minute. I want to read more comments in a minute.
Can we? Because I'd like to hear them.
Oh, okay. So Sally Francis says, yes, I agree. I have loads of stories I wrote a lot in my book. Remember who you truly are. I've now done thousands of readings and taught tens of thousands of children in mainstream schools. Sally Francis.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. Well done, you.
Donna Bailey says the heart doesn't lie. Absolutely. We have somebody called Tammy Maltby Melchizedek joining. So Melchizedek's quite a name if we're talking about psychic well-being and levels of dimensions. And people are just sending us lots of love. Mary Catherine is sending us love. We love you too. There's lots of people sending us love and they're enjoying us. Paula Walsh says, I thought I had nits when I was younger and I kept getting mum to check my head. And you didn't realise then? What do you mean? You kept getting your mum to check. Because the
she was getting
touching your head.
She was getting the tingling. It's almost like a tingling sensation as well. And somebody fiddling because they were going, look, I'm here, Paula, I'm here. And she, oh gosh.
Mia Clark says the world is a great big onion is a song.
Oh, Mia,
that's hilarious.
You're a case and a half. I'm loving it.
She's brilliant. So Gabs, so what do you think, just to wrap up, because I know Gabby by name, Gabby by nature is what you always tell us. I adore you. I love you. I love you. You're in my life. But just, so what do you see when you say that the layers are getting thinner, the veils are getting thinner, there's more psychic children on our planet, and we're having this, this transformation. What do you think is actually happening on our planet right now? On a psychic level, because on a physical level, there's
okay. On a psychic level, we are really being upgraded to much more information and much higher memory and much higher dimension, and that is a little bit off the scale and out there. But brilliant. Seriously, the upgrades that are going on, I mean, we're talking about, don't want to like freak people out, and I don't think we're going to do that.
Say it. No, I'm inviting you to let. But
we are remembering, and we are coming into the fact that there are other beings out there on other planetary systems in other dimensions, like the universe. It's about quantum physics, like quantum multiples upon multiples upon multiples. It's an endless time zone, and we are all traveling through that. All of us are going to go through the same energy, but at different times and different levels. So what I want to say is that psychically, people are going much, much deeper into their inquiry and their work. So, for example, when you're working, Tara, you're going very much, and also Mary Catherine out there, amazing woman,
amazing psychic,
amazing. You're going very much back, the lineages, the past, the soul travel. But we look at it as going backwards, but it's like the reverse. It's like from where we came. Do you understand what I mean? It's a bit far out. It's a bit trippy. Not that I've ever tripped anywhere, apart from over the carpet, darling. But apart from that, it's a bit out there, isn't it? And
it is a bit trippy.
And the sanest person has to kind of ground themselves when all this information starts rolling in. So if people are feeling uncomfortable or a little bit unsure about stuff, it's because they're getting all these downloads, and I feel it's happening very much when people are sleeping. That all this information, esoteric information, is coming into their systems, because, like I said to you previously, if we knew it all, it would blow our circuits. We just wouldn't be able to cope with that. So you have to go at your own speed, at your own pace, and at your own level. There is no right or wrong in any of this work, because everybody is unique and everybody will have something. And if it feels real to them, then it's real. If they validate it for themselves, it's validated. And I feel we are returning back to that point of self-validation, where we don't need other people to say, oh, well, no, I don't believe you, or that's wrong. because no, it isn't. Because if it's real for you, if it feels real, if it's right, then that's exactly what it is. And I think it's about being true to yourself. Absolutely. And saying, this is what I do and this is what I believe.
And don't let anybody else make you feel like you're the crazy one, like, you know.
But some of us like being a bit crazy, and I'm definitely one of those people.
But there's crazy, happy, healthy crazy. But yeah, I totally are in a wonderful way. But it's like the amount of people that have come to one of my classes or something and said, I'm not mad. I'm like, no, you're not mad. Aww. But people have made them believe that they are. But it's like self-love and being grounded means you don't let anyone tell you who you are. I love what you said, Gabby. It's totally true, because that will send you mad. That will actually, give you massive, mental health problems if you can't trust yourself and believe in yourself. And if somebody else doesn't believe you, you just, chuck an onion at them.
And it makes me a bit, I like that. Yeah, we've done that one in the past. Oh, my ears are going, they're tuning me up. I was going to say something then. Oh my God, like, do you get that? Your ears just like going.
That's when the angels come in and it's like, oh, I can't hear properly anymore. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's true. I do think, and that onion analogy, what if the universe is, and all the different dimensions are like the onion, and all the layers between all of them are becoming more transparent and more visible and more accessible to everybody. And we do have to be grounded, like that live wire. We have to have our own internal wiring, and not grounded as in, staunch and closed, but grounded as in anchored into the earth, rooted in ourself, rooted in our self-belief and our self-love, like a tree. Beautiful. Because then you can channel all kinds of things, and you've got a sense of what's real, and you trust yourself, and it's grounded.
The more grounded you are, the higher you'll go. So there are people out there that want to go deeper and higher, go down, because the further down you go and drink, the higher you go. But for God's sake, keep grounded.
No, it's true, because people think ascension is about out here, don't they? Like, I've got to transcend my humanness, transcend my emotions, transcend my mind, transcend my ego, climb up to the top of that tree, Gabs, and then be like, now what? Waiting for the aliens. And it's like, no, you need to be in the roots. Is like actual ascension. It's kind of, I don't want to call it ascension, because I think it's really misguiding and misleading, because we need to bring our awareness down, root it down into the core of who we are, heal the history so our roots can go deeper, right?
Absolutely.
Go into that and kind of claim ourselves back, and then we can go a lot higher. And I think that's possibly why, because we've been doing so much light work or healing work on our history, haven't we? Loads of us have been doing this for 20 years, digging down, going through, clearing and releasing the karmic stuff of humanity, the history, the trauma. Perhaps that's also, as above, so below. So we go higher, and these dimensions are opening to us because we've got grounded enough of us.
Absolutely. I've certainly battled at some of the darker sides of life as well, I must admit, like the darker entities that are out there. So again, I always say to people who've got children, like, be consciously aware of what they are watching and tuning into, because they can invite stuff in that you're not consciously aware of at the time. It's so important that you take note of what they're getting up to, because they are the magnets of bringing all sorts in. Do you know what I mean?
You're totally right. It's absolutely paramount, isn't it, that our children have balanced, healthy food, balanced, healthy, like what they're, exactly like you said, what they're watching, the stimulus and the beliefs that forms in their head, and really just being loved and accepted for all that they are, opened like a little gift.
Absolutely. And I think pets are really important in a child's psyche, animals, because they teach you so much about unconditional love, don't they?
You're just beautiful. I just love you. You teach about unconditional love. You're gorgeous.
I love me too. I do, actually. Sorry, but it's true.
You don't have to say sorry to nothing. You're totally adorable.
I just like to have fun, and I always seem to have a lot of fun when I'm with you. So you always bring out the better side of me.
Oh, I love being with you. Well,
I
yeah,
hope
I
we
mean,
can
I
do
could
some
get into
more of these talks, by the way. I'd like to do some more of these talks, and we could like pick certain aspects and like really go into it. That would be amazing.
Well, I'm also going to put it out there to other people that have these psychic abilities to start sharing as well, because
Exactly.
I think these conversations need to happen a lot more to validate people, because like you said, people are opening up left, right and center and getting awakenings and getting awarenesses and seeing through the veils now and tapping into other timelines and other dimensions and other realities that have for so long we've been told that they don't exist. And it can make people feel like it's just them and it's like they're going a bit crazy. And it's like, no, that actually has existed and has always existed. But we've had a very quarantined, sheltered little life down here on Earth. There's been much that has been hidden from us to try and dumb us down and keep us stupid.
Well, of course, absolutely. It's just about control, isn't it? We know that.
Well, yeah, without going the whole, conspiracy route, but that is absolutely true. There's a lot of our history, there's a lot of who we are as a human race on this planet and how long we've been here and what we can do and the civilizations that have existed and the reality of other beings that are out there. There's a huge cover up, so that maybe think, oh, aliens is a new thing. It isn't. It isn't.
Yeah.
We have abilities beyond our wildest dreams, and if they're being shut down and we're being fed misinformation and not being validated and told we're crazy, to shut it down, it's like that is a control program. And I feel like humanity right now is just going, no, up yours with your control program.
Absolutely.
Like we don't. It's like you suppress it so long. You can only go crazy for so long and think it's you before you realize and you go, no, I'm not mad. I have my rights and this is who I am and this is what's real.
Absolutely. But if you think about our software, if you think about our terabytes, if you think about our brain storage, we've got so much space there. But then now with all these experiments that are being conducted, they are storing in Silicon Valley like terabytes and terabytes of information in droplets of water. So what does that tell you? It's like we've got limited storage. Like people say to me, oh, how do you remember that, Gabs? I go, well, actually, I've got an old-fashioned, grey, boring filing cabinet. If you tell me anything, your file goes in there. And if they want me to access it, it opens up and everything we ever spoke about, and it could have been like years previously, it will all come back if they want me to bring that up and remind you about it. So my cabinet is absolutely chocker, and it just keeps getting taller and taller with everybody's information in it. So the storage out here is limitless, guys. You can like store as much as you like.
And the amount of information that is literally stored in our water, in our bodies, is the history of basically all of the planet, isn't it? Like memory in water. And that's actually some of the comments were talking about Masaru Emoto's work, and I know Seth was watching and he talks a lot about consciousness in water. Totally true. Memory is stored in water. Memories of everything is stored everywhere. So you can totally start to remember and recall past lives or other dimensions that you've existed on, or that you are simultaneously existing on. And we're really going out there now, but I love this. These conversations are so exciting.
Goosebumpy, doesn't it, Tara? I can see how animated you are by this whole conversation now. Now you're really lighting up the room, because that's where your passion lies, I believe. Your passion is very much out there.
I was talking with a friend last night until about 4 a.m.
Wow.
About all of this stuff, because I tried to shut it down for a while because I wanted to anchor. I needed to get my roots and my foundation strong. I Love You Me came into my life. Well, it was already in my life, but I wasn't using it for myself. Classic. I wasn't doing this self-love. I was helping loads of other people, but I didn't apply it to me. So when I started applying it to me, it brought all of me into my body, my whole, my spirit, anchored me, rooted me, gave me such a strong, unshakable with, and I'll use Michelle Fernandez's word here, unfuckwithable foundation. I love that word. Totally like cool. Solid mind. It's her word. It's a brilliant word. And because that's what I Love You Me does. And it's just like it created, instead of that foundation of I'm with what I grew up with was I'm no good, I'm a nobody, and I disappeared out the top of my head. It actually built me a solid foundation so that I know and love and trust myself implicitly. And so as I start to reopen the Pandora's box and go, right, I'm ready to remember, I'm ready to start doing this stuff again. Because I can it's like being a tree with very small roots. You can get too top heavy and too much energy trying to come through, and it can't all come through, and it just is quite difficult. So that's where I was. So my roots have got really strong. So now it's like more energy, more information can come through this highway of the body, because that's essentially what we are, as a transmitting rod, aren't we? We're like a little lightning rod, little transmitting rod for information, for
leader
cosmic information.
Ground. Yeah, like the lightning needs a leader.
That's true.
Like we pull in what we attract. We pull in what we attract, don't we?
Yep. So exactly. So it is really important to get those roots nice and firmly established, because what is going to be opening up to us in the very near future as a collective is going to pop a lot of light bulbs in people's brains if they're not prepared and ready for it. It's literally going to be blowing the fuses. And we don't want that. That's going to be painful. So any blocks that people have now about, oh, I can't trust myself, and am I real? I think bring your self-love reflection to that. Just start to give yourself that strong foundation that you need, because there's going to be a heck of a lot of incredible things very, very soon on the horizon opening up to us, and it's just going to get more and more and more. And we're going to realize our abilities. We're going to realize more who we are, that is way beyond the physical, mental, and emotional bodies. And so, yeah, start getting your foundations ready and get ready for it, everybody. Would you agree with me there, Gabs, or am I just...
100% I would agree with you. I mean, you know, like people will be spinning and moving objects by thought alone. You know, these things are going to happen.
And the rest, yeah.
And the rest are like that.
And the rest.
And the rest.
And the rest. There's a lot of rest. Maybe we can talk about the rest another time, because that would be deep. Okay, Chris is just sending us loads of flowers and hearts and sunshiny things, because that's what he does. Lindsay Richards is saying she can relate to this. Donna is saying, I love you, Me is amazing. And there's loads of comments. And Mary Catherine saying, hello, babes. We love you, Mary Catherine. Super psychic. Go and see her. So that's how I can finish up. Gabby, how can people find you? How can people come and find you if they want to have a reading with you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. It's just Gabriella Hartigan. I don't sort of like really advertise myself, to be honest with you. So
you probably don't need to.
Not really, no. I just do my thing. I mean, people keep telling me that I need to, like, you know, put myself out there a bit more, but I just feel like people will be guided to me naturally anyway. Like it just works like that with me.
Like I was guided to you. So there you go. Well, your name is obviously above this conversation, Gabriella Hartigan. Find her on Facebook. And yeah, I totally love having our psychic conversations and we give each other readings. I totally love it. And I really love having you in my life. And I loved hearing your wisdom. And I know that there's buckets more where that came from. So hopefully we'll do another conversation. But for now, is there anything else you want to say to anybody just before we wrap up and say goodnight?
Just lots of love, dear Earthlings, and have a wonderful evening.
So cute. Oh,
and thank you for having
me.
Love you.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for watching. So much love.